welcome to this episode of Post-Neo-Prelude. I'm your host, Carrie Smith. Tonight's episode will feature the work of Fred Bassett and also a music video by Two Gallants, which is a band off of Saddle Creek Records. We're very fortunate to have Fred come and perform some of his writing for us. He is a very talented poet, and I want to thank him for all the kind words that he shared as we progressed through the interviews and the reading. All of the performances were done at the Greenwood Arts Center and Gallery, which is here in Greenwood, South Carolina, and they always do an excellent job in bringing in local, regional, and national artists to this community. And any other event that they do, it's just always above and beyond. So if anyone has any questions about any of the artwork that they see in the upcoming segments, then you can contact me at the email address that appears at the end of each episode, and I can get that information to you. Let us hear from Fred.
Thanks for inviting me, Gary. It's quite an honor to be here. One of the best things about moving to Greenwood was to discover you, a young poet, eager, very active in the Portrait Society here. And I'd like to read some of my work. I've come to poetry late in life in terms of writing it, although I've loved it all my life pretty much. I come out of an academic background, trained for years and years in ancient Semitic languages, Greek languages, studying the literature of the Bible. And then as an old man, I turned to poetry and found it to be much to my delight. So I'm glad to be here and to share a little bit with you today. Women who plow. When I was 15 years old, my father bought his grandfather's old farm out in the country about 5 miles from Roanoke, Alabama, where I had been living for about 5 years. And on the back side of that farm was a woman already in her 80s. It was the community that my father had grown up in, so he knew this woman when he was a boy. And he told me her story, and that story, and he kind of assigned me to her. I chopped her wood and plowed her garden and stuff like that. And then along came the 70s and the women's movement, and I met some very hard, bitter, cynical women, and I always thought of Mrs. Moore, this woman who was our neighbor. And so in this poem I'm using the metaphor of women who plow to, at the end, to kind of catch those women with every justification for being hard and bitter, but Mrs. Moore was such a contrast to me. So, women who plow. I had heard Dad's stories about Mrs. Moore, how her husband left for other dreams, how she plowed an ox named Dan until the land wore them out. I knocked, expecting a bitter recluse who dipped wormwood for snuff. A hesitant face answered in a bonnet and a coarse dress that swished the floor. Dad sent me to cut you some wood. Then you must be Leon's boy. Her soft voice led me to a dark kitchen where I choked down a dried apple pie. In the barn, the red ox rose from the dry dung through my nostrils. The cracked wooden yoke hung from a rusty hook on the wall. I tried to imagine her striding the furrows all day, hard as a man. Her one resolution even more adamant, to die before asking for help. Back then, I loved the way Mrs. Moore could make a boy feel like a grown man. Such praise for small favors. These days, I love the way she comes hobbling on the scene from the shadows of my mind whenever I meet a hard plowwoman. Back in Alabama, I stopped to see Elsie Brewer. Knocking on the farmhouse door, I think she may be the next to go. The door's unlocked. Come on in. Lord of mercy, it's you, Fred. I've been perished to death to see you. Twisted and curled, her hands look helpless, like the legs that won't give her 2 steps. But I see the calloused hands of a girl who had to plow like a man, or else her drunkard father, plow rope doubled and doubled again, would beat her to the ground. You might think I get lonesome out here, but there ain't but a few folks I care to see. And there's that one cousin who helps me out. She taught me how to be a weaver. Lord, I'm glad you never had to work in no cotton mill. Those old textile hands are folded in her lap as she hovels in the wheelchair. But I see the hands of a kind woman who long to care for the sick, not knowing that nurses don't nurse, from a correspondence course advertised in a dime store magazine. Fred, I've got you a little something before you go. I had a hard time finding figs this year, but what I got turned out good. Leaving, I'm thinking, these will be the last preserves I ever get from her. Do I eat them or store them like memories? My dear old women are dying too fast. Slow down, Joe. Love and Death. Got word yesterday about Tony Fuller. In '49, he had a new silver gray Ford with a glass steering knob mounted left. God, he could wheel that raging V8 while hugging Roseanne Hood with his right. Afternoons, he'd wait in front of the school. She'd scramble across the front seat, slide under his arm, and snuggle up with her cheek on his chest, her right hand in that open shirt with the tangled hair. And there I was, tripping home, desperate for Sue Scott to throw herself at me with such sweet abandon. Tony had called an old friend. You better come over. I just can't live by myself. A neighbor said she heard 2 shots. The door was unlocked. They found his dog in the kitchen, Tony in the bedroom. I understand death, even its necessity. No death, no birth, no birth, no me. So I praise death for my silver cord, knowing that it too will soon snap. But love? Why do we turn aside for the tar baby, humming true love as if it were an eternal truth function? And why do we still long for it, even with that old chariot and swift descent?
I guess by the blood stain of your lips and the wonder of your fingertips, I should prove true to my emptiness and stay here. Well, I'm just a kid of ill repute, but the skin I wear's my only suit, and you're just a substitute for the one that I hold dear. You know you could be anyone. God forgive my tasteless tongue. I never should have been set free. I cover my eyes, I skin my face, beg somehow to be replaced. That's how we deal with boys like me. Well, I guess by this world so sick with loss, and your services so free of cost, I should climb down off my rugged cross and lay with you. But you know by now it's 8:30, and I only came here for escape. And you're just my next mistake, like me to you. You know you could be anyone. God forgive your unborn sons. I hope they don't end up like me. I drag my mind through streets of shame, blame myself, forgive the game. That's how we deal with boys like me. But despite what you've been told, I once had a soul left somewhere behind, a former friend of mine. And I hate to speak so free, but you mean nothing to me. So if the streetlights they shine bright, I'll get home tonight. Well, I guess by the dim light in your eyes, and that to you all things come as a surprise, I should set the steel trap of your thighs and dive right in. But to you I'm just a confused child, insecure or in denial. Go raise your robes, go have your trial, I'll let you win. You know I could be anyone. God forgive what I should have done. My thoughts enough to guilty be. Yes, I guess I made this bed, but I'll take the sidewalk instead. That's how we deal with boys like me. But despite what you've been told, I once had a soul left somewhere behind, a former friend of mine. And I hate to sound so true, but I mean nothing to you. So if the streetlights they shine bright, I'll get home tonight.